On behalf of the Board of Trustees, we'd like to welcome you to the Standing Committee meeting of the Durham District School Board, Monday, January the 4th. The meeting will come to order. The Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school board and schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms a part of the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none. Are there any changes to the agenda? No changes. The agenda is approved and distributed. We'll begin with item 5 on your agenda, community presentations. On behalf of Trustee Lundquist, who is not able to be here tonight, I would like to welcome teacher James Cook and students from Brooklyn High School, Brianna Robson and Krista Silva, to talk to us about menstrual products in our schools. Brianna, when you're ready.
Would you like us to share the screen, or
when you're ready? Yes, of course, Krista.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, are we good?
We're good.
Okay, so hello everyone and Happy New Year. My name is Brianna Robson and with me is Krista Silva, and we are from the grade 12 Equity and Social Justice class at Brooklyn High School. Today we are speaking to you and trying to convince you to provide free menstrual products in DDSB schools.
"70% of girls have missed school due to lack of product, which is around 1 in 7 girls only in Ontario, and this is a very prevalent issue affecting all girls. This issue, because girls are missing school, it leads to them falling behind, which could put them at a disadvantage academically. This also connects to a bigger issue of period poverty. So what exactly is period poverty? Period poverty is an issue affecting girls that lack menstrual products. This could be in 2 ways. This could be due to cost and girls being unable to afford menstrual products, or due to lack of access, where girls do not have access to menstrual products and cannot get menstrual products. Some areas of high period poverty are Ajax, Oshawa, and Pickering. Although these are high areas of period poverty, this should still be done to the board. As mentioned before, sometimes girls do lack access.
Currently, menstrual products cost 25 cents per product in schools across Durham District School Board. In all of Ontario, school boards like Toronto District School Board, Thames Valley District School Board, and Waterloo District School Board all provide free access to menstrual products, and we think that Durham District School Board should be next. The menstrual cycle is a biological process experienced by half of the population. Girls do not have a choice about getting their period, so they deserve to be supported when it comes to menstrual equity. Access to menstrual products should be a human right, but it is more like a privilege. Lack of access to appropriate menstrual products makes common tasks that non-menstruators take easily for granted, like walking and sitting, difficult to manage. If public school washrooms supply free essential items like hand soap and toilet paper, then they should supply free menstrual products as well.
83% of women feel while menstruating they cannot fully participate in activities. So what does this exactly mean? Well, it means that girls often have to skip opportunities that can propel them academically forward, and they might have to miss opportunities in leisure activities. This could negatively affect their mental health. as they are unable to participate in things that they enjoy. As well, studies have shown the lack of access of products actually results in high anxiety within girls, as well as low self-esteem. And this has also contributed to a stigma around the menstrual cycle that can negatively affect girls and their mental health. When products are actually provided, studies have shown that this improves girls' mental health. And overall, they are benefited, not just in having access to products, but their mental health is. Having products available for girls makes them feel that the school is supporting them and that the school board is there for them, as they do not feel they have to hide a part of themselves or they need to feel ashamed.
Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit more about menstrual stigma. So, every girl has had the embarrassment of getting their period in class and having to discreetly search for a menstrual product and conceal it so no one sees. This is because of the stigma surrounding the menstrual cycle that comes from cultural taboos and typical stereotypes about women. Surveys show that nearly 60% of women feel embarrassed when they menstruate because of menstrual stigma. Menstrual stigma stops girls from feeling confident and dignified with their period, which overall affects their mental health and well-being, which is what Krista was just saying. And by providing free menstrual products in school washrooms, we can take a stand against menstrual stigma.
As well as this, menstrual products aren't free, and this is something that we've both acknowledged, but there is a way to get this at a very low cost or at no cost to the board. So how would this be done? So menstrual products brands actually provide free menstrual products for schools. All that needs to be done is a form needs to be filled out for your school. You put in your school information, and they will actually send you free menstrual products based on the population of menstruators within that school. As well as this, to ensure that there is enough, there would also be an opportunity to use a charity called Brands for Canada, which Brands for Canada currently supports the Toronto District School Board, and they have expressed interest in also supporting Durham District School Boards. And this could be helpful to make sure that there is enough products, and they would ship them right to the schools themselves. And we would be putting the menstrual products in baskets, as this is affordable for the school board and compared to some other options that could be used.
In conclusion, by providing free menstrual products in Durham District School Board washrooms, you can take a stand against menstrual stigma and period poverty by showing that you care about the health and well-being of your students. Access to free menstrual products also fits into the board improvement plan, the Durham District's board improvement plan for student achievement, as it focuses on equity, diversity, and poverty. So Durham District School Board, please help us make an impact on menstrual equity. And thank you very much for taking the time, letting us speak to you today. Now we will be taking questions.
Thank you very much, Krista and Brianna, for your presentation. Just wondering now if there are any questions or comments.
There's hands. There's hands in the participant. Can you see it?
Not on my screen, but I
Okay.
believe Trustee Stone has her hand up there. Am I correct?
So we have, so Trustee Stone, Trustee Edwards, Morton, and Forbes are the ones on your list.
Stone, Edwards.
Morton and Forbes. Crawford and
Thank
Barrett.
you. Thank you very much.
Crawford and Barrett, you got those two as well?
I have them.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Trustee Barnes. So Trustee Stone, we'll begin with you.
Thank you, through you, and thank you so much for the presentation. It is an important topic. I just wondered if there were any problems with the free products in the bathrooms. Did you research that from other boards at all?
Yeah, so currently we did do some research. As we mentioned, some boards are already providing them for free. They haven't had an issue with garbage or excessive products being taken. And again, we do want to combat period poverty. So we do want people, if they need it, to take it as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Stone. Trustee Edwards.
Trustee Stone actually asked my question because my concern is ensuring that the product is available, because I know we have, when it comes to hand sanitizers, we have a huge thing around the destruction of soap dispensers, etc. And I would just not have a product available, not being available for use if there was people taking them and that they're just not available, or destruction of them.
To answer the destruction question, actually, we do. It's not like we're magically adding menstrual products in washrooms now. There already are menstrual products. We just want to take away the price to make them more accessible to students.
Thank you, Trustee Edwards. Trustee Morton.
Thank you, Krissa and Brianna, for your presentation. I have a question regarding, are we talking about just secondary schools, or are you also suggesting that we make these products available in elementary schools as well?
Currently, we're focused on secondary schools because that is where the need is the greatest for menstrual products.
We would like to, sorry, we would like to in the future, depending on how our cooperation is with the charities and stuff, and if everything's working with secondary schools, we would also try and like to reach it out to elementary schools too, because they need it as well.
Yeah.
Right. And in this day and age, we are thinking a lot about equity. So I would suggest if we do this for secondary, we would be obligated to look at this for elementary as well.
Yes, that makes sense.
For sure.
Thank you, Trustee Morton. Trustee Forbes.
Thank you. I think all of the questions have been asked and
Answered.
I really, yes, and answered. And I just wanted to thank you both for taking the time to come and present to us. And it was a very well-researched and thought out presentation. So I just want to thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Forbes. Trustee Crawford.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the presentation. It sounds good. That's why we have to look into it more carefully. It's free for secondary. Yes or no? Am I coming through?
Yeah. Sorry, could you just reiterate your question?
Yeah, is it free for secondary?
Currently not. So like they're within the washrooms, you'd have to pay 25 cents right now within secondary schools.
No, I meant this program that we're speaking about. I know there's a program to provide these items on an emergency basis, but this is a new program and there's people who are putting it forward, more than one that I understand. So I just want to get the cost down. So the cost is free for secondary?
Yes, currently what we're looking at, it should be at no cost to the board due to using the charity Brands for Canada, and as well as using the free menstrual products given by menstrual products brands like Playtex and Always. The only cost that we could foresee is just the actual physical basket, but often those are very inexpensive and people have them around and the schools probably have them around.
And so this organization supplies them free of charge on an ongoing basis. One of the ones I read about, it was only good for 1 year and then there was costs after that.
So because Brands for Canada is a charity, it will always be free of costs, and as well for menstrual products. The way that works, they send it they send you big boxes based on your school population at the beginning of the school year, and that's how they get them. But there is no cost to either of these.
And we mentioned secondary and elementary separate, but would it also be free for elementary? And whose decision is that?
So I'm unsure of whose decision for elementary, but if we would be using the same program and the same kind of idea that we've put out, yes, it would also be free.
And this might be a question for staff or director. Is there any liability, possible liability in this for the board?
Trustee Crawford, I have Trustee Barrett on my speakers list, and we definitely are hoping that we can hear from Director March. Would Director March, would that be agreeable to you if I ask Trustee Barrett to speak?
Most definitely.
All right, thank you. Trustee Barrett, go ahead.
Yeah, who would dare, right? Director Marsh. Anyway, Krista and Brianna.
I would not, Mike.
No, but Chris and Brianna, thank you very much for coming forward. I'm in full support of the concept that you have brought forward. It was actually an initiative that was also talked about by two of our student trustees last year as well. And unfortunately, it did not necessarily go as far as it would have necessarily have, it did not go as far as I think that we would have liked it to. What I might suggest, and I know that Director Marsh, you're going to speak to it as well, is that certainly that the staff would come back with a report, because I have heard some very, very good things about the charity. I have also heard some elements where it didn't quite work as well as it should have. And certainly what I wouldn't want to have happen is to be able to give something that's very necessary and then take it away as well. So, and I could put it back, you know, we always load things up on staff, of course, but perhaps have staff come back with understanding what the charity does, get some of the information that you've talked about, the pros and the cons of the charity. What are some of the pitfalls? What are definitely, because you've already outlined a lot of the benefits, and then we can, I think we could take a look at it in a more fulsome look to be able to understand and to answer some of those questions that you know, even Trustee Crawford has with regards to liabilities and costs, etc. But and fully in support. I think it's a progressive board that looks to this of being able to ensure equity. And I am recognized through OPSPA that there have been other boards that have also gone forward with this. And if Toronto can do it, certainly Durham could do it as well. But I don't want to preclude anything. As I see Nora smiling at me, but I'll turn it over to the chair. So, but thank you very much for coming forward. It's a very important topic and equity concern. So,
thank you, Trustee Barrett. Director, Trustee Stone just wanted to make a comment. I wondered if that would be more suitable for her to comment, and then we'll come to you. Thank you. Go ahead, Trustee Stone.
Sorry, that was no. I'm good. Thank you.
All right, Director Marsh.
Thank you, Chair Thatcher. I just want to echo our thanks to the students and the whole group of students who've brought forward this important social issue for us in terms of equity. And I was going to say Admin Council did have the opportunity to review it very briefly. So we'd be more than happy to bring forward some more details. But I think really in terms of at secondary school, we already have dispensers. It's a very simple conversion in terms of making sure that they then don't require the 25 cents to access. And we can look into the charities as well as ballpark a potential figure from the board budget should the charities be phased out over a period of time so that the board makes an informed decision. But our estimate is that it's a minimal cost when we look at the where we're placing funding in terms of equity. And certainly I think the students have really presented a compelling case to us.
Thank you very much, Director. Trustee Barnes, am I missing a hand? Oh, I see. Arpita?
Yes.
Did you have a comment to make?
Arpita.
Yeah, I first want to thank Brianna and Krista for bringing up this important issue. I know that in the past, our previous student trustees have been working towards it. I know it's been a discussion among Alia, Logan, and myself. And again, all the resources you have brought forward is absolutely incredible. And we hope that our board does take this into consideration, and perhaps we could collaborate with some of the boards that have already put their plans into fruition alongside many of the other boards that are currently advocating for the same process. And that way we can come up with the best possible solution that fits DDSB.
Thank you, Arpita. Director Marsh, it looks like to me that the consensus is very favorable for this program. Did I understand you correctly that that you will go away and put together some information, some further information, and if necessary, bring it back to the board?
We're very happy to do that. If the board requires further information, we're happy to put that together in a format for you. Otherwise, we're also happy to go ahead and start the work proceeding.
Thank you. Krista and Brianna, thank you so much for coming and making this presentation to the Board of Trustees. We're just delighted that you came out to see us tonight, and Director Marsh, I'm sure we'll be connecting with you. So on your agenda, item 6, tonight we have 2 presentations. The first one, Leaders Learn, Professional Learning Series for Aspiring Superintendents. And I'll call on Superintendent Georgette Davis. Hi, Georgette.
Georgette, you're on mute.
Can you hear me and see my screen at this time?
Yes.
We can.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. And through you, this report can be found on pages 30 to 37 of your agenda package. And the purpose of this report is to share the details of the Professional Learning Series for Aspiring Superintendents. This program, entitled Leaders Learn, Professional Learning Series for Aspiring Superintendents, is created to provide system leadership and learning opportunities for experienced principals, as well as aspiring superintendents. This program also supplements the existing professional learning opportunity that is provided already for vice principals who aspire to be principals. This learning reflects our commitment to human rights, equity, and leadership. It also embeds additional values from our operational goals related to Indigenous education, innovation, and well-being, because we value how we learn and grow, our achievements and forward thinking, and how we feel and our involvement in our learning and work. So who can participate? Administrators who are aspiring to be superintendents. However, this learning is open to all experienced principals who are looking for an additional professional development opportunity. The complete program is divided into 6 modules that will take place over 2 school years. Year 1, as you can see on your screen, includes modules 1 to 3, and will give leaders the chance to learn about themselves as leaders, their leadership styles, their roles as advocates for human rights and equity. During year 1, leaders will learn about the leadership process, about authenticity, transparency, situational leadership, and how individual leadership journeys affect our work and have an impact on those we serve. They will meet with and learn from leaders throughout the organization. They will learn from leaders in schools, such as our educational assistant leaders, our ECEs, our secretaries, our custodians. And they will also learn with and from leaders in various departments in our board, such as facilities or human resources. They will learn about their stories while working on projects and planning learning opportunities together. During year 2, it's about mentorship. So this will include learning about communication, about operations and impact. And during year 2, the leaders will be mentors to other leaders in the program. On page 31 in your agenda package, it outlines the timelines starting from the information session that we had in December until the module 6. And pages 33 to 36 outlines the topics and themes for each module, as well as the expectations and the vision and the goal that we have. And on page 37, I provided you with a sample agenda for module 1. The sample agenda just outlines that we share the focus from leadership, from research. It comes from research, our learning. We use case studies to learn, and we also use current events in education. These are all guides from our programming. An information session took place in December, where we invited interested principals to come, and they learned a little bit around the program. And we have another information session planned for this month. And all interested leaders are also invited to participate in module 1 before they make a decision, or after they've already made a decision to participate, because this will give them an opportunity to see whether they would like to be part of this specific learning opportunity. All superintendents will be sharing their insights and knowledge with the candidates during these learning modules. And we will also be calling upon special guests to participate as required. I am really looking forward to working and learning with the leaders throughout the system during the Leaders Learn Professional Development Series. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Superintendent Davis. Are there any questions or comments from trustees?
You have Michael.
I have them.
Myself.
I have them, Patrice. Now, thanks.
Okay.
So much. Okay. Trustee Barrett.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you very much, Superintendent Davis, for this. I was just looking at your presentation on page 36 with regards to corporate operations and governance. Now, obviously, I have a bias, Superintendent Davis, but I'm just thinking that the governance journey for trustees is a little bit more than just setting direction through the budget. I think certainly part of earlier leadership classes, etc., also talked about that relationship between trustees and superintendents. It's a critical component. So I'm not sure if that's included elsewhere in the program and I've missed it. And if that's the case, then I'll retire gently. But I do have a bias that thinks that would be an important element, because I know that as superintendents, trustees drive you crazy. So it's an important element of being able to balance those pieces. And if it's elsewhere, Superintendent Davis, then I apologize. I've missed it. So.
Thank you, Trustee Barrett, and through you, Madam Chair. So in each of the modules, there's one case study or focus that we bring to light. The other pieces are weaved in throughout each of the modules, but we wanted to have an opportunity to have special guests, like perhaps yourself or a trustee, to come to talk about their journey and to make those connections. And so when we've highlighted just one piece of the module in this, because we couldn't put the whole thing in there. So it's just one little highlight to give you a taste of what we'll be talking about, what the case study will be about during those modules. So thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Barrett. Trustee Barnes, was your hand up?
Yes.
Oh.
Thank you. So thank you, Michael. I had that concern too. I'm like, where is it? There does it say that you should love your trustee? I didn't see it in there. But I got a few other questions in regards to the course. I'm very happy that it's open to experienced principals, because I am really a strong believer in the more educated your staff are on each level, the better employee group you have. So I'm glad it's open to principals, even if they're not necessarily going through to be superintendents. I'm happy for that. I just wonder how many can the course hold at a time? Like, what's the registration cap for the course? Do you know that yet?
Not yet. And at this moment, there is not a cap per se, because we're in a virtual world. We have opportunities to do things a little bit different.
Yeah.
So we're opening it up to all our experienced principals. And then once we have our principals who are interested, we'll be able to work with that. But what we want is to have opportunities for, depending on the number, if it's a bigger number, just small group conversations, small group work, even virtually, to make it work.
Okay, thank you. My other question is, people are self-nominating for this?
Yes.
Okay, which is good. Okay, and the is this program different from the Racialized Leader program, or is this a next step for that program?
These are all supplementary programs. So all opportunities for learning, because we recognize that leaders learn in different ways. So all supplement each other in terms of the learning. So participants can participate in different ways and in different programs as well.
Okay, and my final question is, I noticed that there was a system project that that will be done. So my question is, how are these going to be evaluated, and if they're very good, are we going to do them?
Director Marsh is smiling, because when we say system project, I start to smile because it's so exciting. Yeah. Part of the learning is learning from leaders all through the system, because we are all leaders in different ways. So it's for experienced principals. However, it's giving the experienced principals an opportunity to learn from leaders in all walks of the system. And in that, meaning that the projects are connected to our operational goals, but also learning with and from different leaders in different ways. So when I say educational assistants or custodians or teachers, or it's projects that not only support principal leadership, but support leadership of different kinds. So in the first year, the principals are going to have an opportunity to choose from a menu of projects that they will work with, and work with different leaders in the system. You'll see those things happening, because it will be linked also to superintendents and their portfolios as well.
Okay.
And then in the second year, they will be mentors to other principals who are working on the projects as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Exciting.
Thank you, Trustee Barnes. It is exciting.
May I just add
go
to that
ahead,
response?
Director Marsh. Yes, by all means.
It's a bit awkward and virtual. I just want to add to that response a little bit. I think one of the key outcomes then is everyone who participates in this program will have been responsible for a system level leadership project that they have been a leader in, which is a key opportunity then for those who are interested in the superintendency to be able to reflect on themselves as a system leader and leading different employee groups within the organization. So that is the goal of that system project.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions. And so moving on to our second presentation, which is the draft FSL review, and calling on Superintendent Margaret Lazarus.
I'm having trouble unmuting the video. No, unmuting to the video. Jonathan, can you help?
I think it would be best just to continue.
For some reason, the video is not. Okay, I'll start. I apologize for that, but the report can be found on pages 38 to 265 of your board package. So thank you, Chair Thatcher. The purpose of this report is to provide trustees with a draft report on the French as a second language review for information. This report is a draft format to give trustees time to absorb the information found therein and identify any further clarifications required prior to making a decision about FSL programming within the district on January 18th. As well, this gives the public an opportunity to see the report and provide feedback. To ensure that this report was accessible to trustees over the holiday break, we made some last-minute summaries of the data that we had collected because the data was very extensive, and you may have noticed references to these documents in Appendix H, and these and other technical issues will be corrected in the final document. The work of the FSL Review Committee was quite intense, and as we were navigating complex issues. Throughout this extensive review and draft report, we have sought to find a balance and to provide a path forward to ensure the continuity of French language learning and ensure that FSL programming is sustainable for the benefit of all students. This evening's presentation will give you a brief, high-level accounting of the review process, Ministry of Education policy, what we heard, what we found, and what we are recommending. So please join me in welcoming Daniel Hunter, FSL facilitator, and David Fitchett, Education Officer, who will be presenting with me. Both were members of the FSL Review Committee.
Thank you. The Ontario Ministry of Education document entitled A Framework for FSL K-12 sets out the vision and goals for FSL in our province. As can be seen on the slide, the guiding vision states that students in English language school boards have the confidence and ability to use French effectively in their daily lives. The ministry has identified 3 goals that support the vision for FSL in Ontario. They include increased student confidence, proficiency, and achievement in FSL, increase the percentage of students studying FSL until graduation, and increase student, educator, parent, and community engagement in FSL. Ontario Ministry of Education policy sets out the requirements for the FSL program. School boards can exceed these minimum requirements. Core French is mandatory from grades 4 to 8 in English language elementary schools. By the end of grade 8, students must accumulate 600 hours of French instruction. The completion of 1 FSL credit at the high school level is also required for graduation. School boards have the option of offering a French immersion and/or extended French program and may choose to start these programs at various grade levels so long as minimum requirements set out by the ministry are met. In the French immersion program, French must be the language of instruction for a minimum of 50% of the total instructional time at every grade level of the program, and provide a minimum of 3,800 hours of instruction of French by the end of grade 8. In high school, students must complete 10 French credits to complete the French immersion program. Currently, the DDSB offers 5,225 hours of French instruction by the end of grade 8. French immersion begins in grade 1. In grades 1, 2, and 3, French is the language of instruction for 100% of the total instructional time. In grades 4 through 8, French is the language of instruction for 50% of the total instructional time. In the DDSB, French is offered in all 7 geographic areas served by the board. The location of the 18 elementary schools and the 7 secondary schools that offer French immersion in the DDSB ensures that students have access to the program regardless of geographic location. While not currently offered in the DDSB, extended French is the 3rd FSL program set out by the ministry. In an extended French program, French must be the language of instruction for a minimum of 25% of the total instructional time at every grade level of the program, and must provide a minimum of 1,260 hours of French instruction by the end of grade 8. If offered at the high school level, 7 French credits are needed to complete the extended French program. And passing it to David Fitchett.
Thank you, Danielle. Over the course of the review process, we consulted with all stakeholders through a variety of means, which included public sessions, surveys, and thought exchanges. Stakeholders were candid in discussing the successes of the DDSB FSL program. Parents and guardians reported a high confidence and French proficiency level in their children. The majority of students participating in the survey found French to be very enjoyable and those who indicated an interest in continuing with French expressed appreciation for the benefits of the program. Stakeholders were equally candid in discussing the challenges. Teacher retention and recruitment was a top priority for all stakeholders. Parents expressed concerns about French proficiency among some FSL teachers. A top priority for our secondary students was the lack of course offerings at high school, which sometimes created barriers for students in completing their French certificate. Challenges associated with balancing enrollment in in the English program and the French program at dual track schools. Staff and parents expressed concerns about the value placed on core French programs. These successes and challenges created the opportunity to think differently about DDSB FSL programming. These included increasing our FSL programs to offer extended French, expanding and enhancing the core French program, implementing creative solutions to secondary course choices by providing online course sharing across schools, increasing the number of e-learning courses, offering more choice for FSL courses at summer and night school. The possibilities are numerous, and we look forward to implementing much of what we heard in the upcoming 3-year ministry plan for FSL programming. The challenges associated with providing and maintaining a robust FSL program are not unique to the DDSB, but are common across the province and across the country, and many school boards have participated in a review process similar to the one that we have just completed. The findings of the review of FSL programs are as follows. Staffing. Many Ontario school boards have found that the recruiting and hiring qualified French certified teachers are serious threats to a viable French immersion core French program. In the DDSB, in the fall of 2020, 40 FSL teachers were on leave, and administrators are experiencing difficulty filling these positions with qualified FSL teachers. During the 2019-2020 school year, we have a significant number of teachers in FSL classrooms teaching with a temporary letter of approval. FSL requires specific qualifications to teach French. Day-to-day supply remains unfilled at higher rates when compared to the average rate in English programs. In the DDSB, there are 349 qualified FSL teachers that are not currently teaching in an FSL program. In terms of programming, classes in the English program are much more likely to be stacked, meaning that combining more than one grade within the same classroom than in a French immersion program. In terms of resources, a particular concern was the lack of French resources to support students identified with special needs when compared to the greater variety and number of English materials available to students in English programs. Physical space. Across all elementary schools offering French immersion program, 71% of schools are currently beyond capacity. As well, a lack of dedicated classroom space is a challenge that is frequently expressed by core French teachers. Enrollment patterns. Although enrollment in French immersion has increased over the past 5 years, there is still a significant attrition as students move through the grade levels. In terms of course selection, core French is available consistently across our secondary schools. However, courses available to French immersion students can be more limited because of the availability of the courses is determined by the interaction of 3 factors. Those factors are the number of students enrolled, the qualification of the staff, and timetabling conflicts.
I know that Superintendent Lazarus was having some issues connecting with the meeting. So was this a slide she was to present?
It was.
Okay. So while this report is coming forward to you in draft this evening so that we can seek your feedback as well as have it out in the public sphere in terms of recommendations, it is our thinking in terms of sharing recommendations with you tonight for discussion, and then it would move forward for action to the board meeting on January 18th. So in terms of recommendations, there is the recommendation that we would face. Okay, there you go. Margaret, that's perfect timing. Welcome back.
So thank you so much. I had to log out and reboot, and for some reason the video stopped working. I couldn't get into it. So I want to just finish the presentation. So on this slide, what do we know? We know that there is a high demand from our families and students for French immersion programs. We know that our core French programming provides another pathway to bilingualism. We know that parents and staff have high expectations for student success, regardless of choice in programming. We know that ensuring program viability is very complex, with no solutions that can satisfy all stakeholders. We know that FI is an optional program. Lessons learned from other boards indicate that with the expansion of primary core French, coupled with addressing system pressures, students will have the opportunity to be exposed to a second language in a fulsome way and allow for program viability in both English and French programming. We know that there were 4 critical overriding issues that we had to address: balancing student enrollment with dual track schools to support viable English language classrooms within elementary schools, maintaining a sufficient number of qualified FSL teachers at the elementary and secondary level, ensuring appropriate levels of French proficiency among FSL teachers, and ensuring adequate resources and supports for learning for all and equity of outcomes. This has resulted in the following staff recommended option. 1, removing English FDK programs in single track FI schools. The Ministry of Education does not require English FDK in a single track school, and this will increase the availability of classroom space, reducing the number of portables needed, which would help address overcapacity issues in some schools. Recommendation 2, charging students the fee for the DELF exam, with the school board contributing to operational costs for running the exam. Last year, it cost the board $50,000 to offer the exam to our students. Recommendation 3, given the current growth and demand for FI programming and the challenges that this report outlines, the status quo for growing the FI program without checks is not sustainable, nor in the best interest of quality French programming. So, core French introduced in the primary grades and programming enhanced in ensuing grades. French immersion, minutes adjusted to match ministry requirements. Enrollment in FI schools, capped to ensure viability of English and French programs. Capping would be responsive to population growth in the various regions of our district. Extended French, introduced in grade 7 to provide an additional FSL entry. The staff recommended option addresses many of the challenges of delivering the FSL program. This approach will ensure that FSL programming is sustainable for the benefit of future cohorts of students attending DDSB. So that's our presentation tonight, and we're happy to take questions at this time.
And just to add, Superintendent Lazarus, before we go into the question portion, within the report, when we talk about charging the partial fee for the DELF examination, we do say that we would, of course, for those families in need, we would subsidize it so that it wouldn't be a barrier in terms of the charge for those students. But I don't think you necessarily mentioned that on the slide. And so I just thought for those who perhaps haven't read the report, listening from the public, we would mention that again.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So we're happy to take questions.
Thank you, Superintendent Lazarus, Danielle, and David. I just wanted to make a comment before we go to the board for questions and comments, that tonight is an opportunity for us to ask questions and provide feedback to staff so that we can be better prepared and informed and make informed decisions at our January 18th board meeting. So I'm just going to go now to Trustee Barnes.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the staff that put this report together. I know this could not have been easy. I sat through some of the online stuff and I know it definitely wasn't easy. So thank you. This is a very detailed report. I have a few questions, and for me, it's hard to look at this because I know in Ajax we have a big growth in French immersion programming, and in my areas, I can see it's a very diverse program. And I've had conversations with families, especially immigrant families, that love French immersion because they think it offers an additional opportunities for their child to integrate and to be a part of Canadian society. It also gives them almost, they like the French immersion program because everybody's learning French at the same time. So for those students that have French as a second language, the parents are happy that they're all learning French at the same time. And then when they get to the point where they're learning English, all of them seem to have some of the same difficulties. So I know those are some of the feedbacks that I've gotten in my area. So I love the plan to grow the core program because I think that program does need bolstering up and supporting in regards to making it a more robust program. So I like those pieces. I agree with the lack of resources to support French teachers. That's not something new. I've heard that over the years in regards to the resources that are available for teaching, the support pieces around French teachers having the same kind of supports that we offer to our English teachers. So I've heard those pieces as well. In the report, it shows that our French students are doing well, which is great. And I love the fact that we have the program in different areas. So I know in other places we've talked about elitism in our programming. So I'm wondering if we saw any of that in our French immersion programming, where we were servicing one particular area socioeconomic, because I know that's come forward a lot in the TDSB. My other question is the data around racialized and marginalized students in French immersion. We've talked about some of the special needs pieces, but I didn't see a lot of the data around that piece. So those are a few of my comments and questions. I don't know if you want to respond to those, Margaret.
Yeah, so one of the encouraging things that we found in the report was that unlike other boards, our French immersion programs are situated in all regions of our board and in all socioeconomic parts of our board. So we offer a French immersion to all students, South Oshawa, North Oshawa, South Ajax, North Ajax. So all of our students have access to French immersion schools for sure. And with regards to our data of our racialized kids, we are going to be bringing forward a report in next month on the student census data, and you will see, and we noted that in the report, that of the students that were surveyed, that responded to the survey, that certainly about 40% of them were racialized and they were in French immersion, they indicated. So certainly it is a program that is responsive to the needs of all of our communities.
My other question is, and we didn't have this in the recommendation, but we talked about schools, and we have really two schools that were brought forward that the ratios were off. So I wondered if we seem to trend around 62 to 38 in regards to French immersion and English in the schools. I wonder if we considered maybe having a cap on that to balance. So if we cap it at 62 to 38, or if we cap it at 50 to 50, would that help us in any way to balance what the English and French program looks like in the dual track and disperse students accordingly after we're full?
So we did look at that, looking at our schools like Maple Ridge, Southwood, that have an imbalance of French to English programming, and but we recognize that when you cap, because neighborhoods changing, we'd always have to be looking at boundary reviews because the population changes and grows and shifts. So that was not a viable option for us. But we do recognize that with capping, because we're looking at capping according to our municipal numbers, we're looking at that capping, and we recognize if we use that basis for our capping, it really will balance out the enrollment in some of our schools that are really that profile with high French immersion enrollment and low English enrollment. The capping is a strategy that we know that will and has been used in other boards as well to balance out enrollment and to make sure that the dual track schools have a balanced enrollment projection.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Barnes. Trustee Morton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I have two questions. The first one, you're suggesting that we introduce core French in a primary grade. Are you thinking grade 1, grade 2, or grade 3?
We're thinking of introducing core French in grade 1. And it's been done with much success in several other boards across the province. And it means perhaps having 40 minutes a week in grade 1, 40 minutes a week in grade 2, 40 minutes a week in grade 3. And it'll be an oral program that will be very hands-on and using the community, bringing the community into the classroom. That some of those strategies are what we're going to be using to ensure that we can expand the program into the primary grades, recognizing that the ministry directive is 600 minutes at the end of grade 8. It doesn't say that you cannot do that. So other boards have done it with much success. So we want to emulate some of those programming for our students.
That makes good sense to me. My second question is regarding the 3 options that you have provided to us. You're recommending that we would look at recommendation option number 1. What are the greatest advantages of option 1 over 2 and 3?
So option 1, really what we're doing, we're adjusting the French immersion minutes. The option provides that early entrance into French immersion as what in our consultation sessions with our community, they really wanted an early entry. Some wanted a junior kindergarten, but that certainly would not address some of the pressures that we're feeling. Also at option 1, we have a lot of students who do struggle with learning, and with 50% of English, 50% French, 50% English, they get an opportunity to address some of those concerns that they have. We do know that in special education, supports that are given to students are language neutral. It doesn't really matter the language that they get into supporting, but we know that with kids who are struggling, they can get that support in English to help them along so that we can address some of those issues with students earlier. Another advantage to option 1 is that the enhancement, of course, the enhancement of core French, and also offering another entry into French immersion. So if because of capping a student was not able to access French at grade 1 for whatever reason, it could be choice or it could be that they were not permitted in, they would have another entry into French immersion. So we really like that opportunity because it gives them another opportunity to access FSL programming.
Perfect. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Trustee Morton. Trustee Crawford, do you have a question?
Yes, I did. I've noticed one of the recommendations is to phase something out. And I guess I'd like to keep in mind that one of the reasons we're taking this journey is because of what took place at Maple Ridge. Sort of opened our eyes as to when we get so involved with a great program that we could begin to infringe on the rights of others. So this phasing out business, is that, maybe what I should do is ask Jim Markowski to speak to this because he was in the center of the storm, but we must ensure that we don't run into that situation again. And is that covered, and would phasing out maybe produce a similar situation?
So the only thing that we're phasing out is FDK at single track FI schools. That's the only thing that we're phasing out. And the elimination of FDK in the single track school will allow us to maximize the capacity of the classrooms for French immersion in our schools. We know that the ministry, we're not contravening any edict from the ministry if we phase out kindergarten in a single track school. It's not a requirement of a single track school. They're the exception to the rule of having kindergarten in all elementary schools. So it would not cause any undue problems in the future at all.
Sorry, if I'll add.
Yes.
I'll add, Superintendent Lazarus. So in terms of the Maple Ridge experience, I think that what this recommendation does, it does alleviate the challenge that we had, because if you have a demand that you continue to feed, the numbers continue to rise. And what we've indicated in the report is it's not a sustainable model from a staffing perspective, but also that was what then starts to happen in a school, that the English numbers become so low that the programming for the English students then can become a challenge. The students in the English program can become a challenge. So by introducing the CAP system, what we're doing then is ensuring that there is a balanced approach in those schools that are dual track schools, so that the English program is as viable as the French immersion program, and that the French immersion program is sustainable from a qualified staffing perspective.
And I think that's a good lesson learned. Thank you very much.
And Acting Associate Director Markowski, did you want to add to that?
Thank you, Chair Thatcher. The only thing I would add, Director Marsh actually captured that beautifully. I know that many of our Maple Ridge parents were actually involved in part of the focus groups that Superintendent Lazarus and her group worked through in relation to the FSL review. But Trustee Crawford, I would concur with Director Marsh's comments, is that that balanced approach in terms of our dual track schools is really what is sort of addressed through these recommendations that are coming forward, which would definitely provide options to the challenges that we observed at Maple Ridge.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, moving on to Trustee Edwards.
Thank you. Again, I want to just recognize staff putting the amount of detail and amount of report, but I still have some questions around a couple of the recommendations. One is around some of the costs, because it's phasing out kindergarten of a single track. There is going to be a cost associated with retrofitting those rooms to be used as other classrooms. So there's a cost associated with that. So I want to know what the costs are for these options, and where the savings are, where the additional costs are going to be. The second is around the partial fee for offering the DELF, or participating in the DELF examination. No matter whether you say that this, it's available, there's subsidy is required, is available. I know families will not, ask for it. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, when you even offering something as long, it's a very difficult process to ask for it. And I can tell you, living through it myself, and was on welfare in my family, and we never asked, because that was there's a stigma to ask for that. We would never. There was a pride associated. So I'm saying that that is a bit of an issue there. And then and it's not covering the whole cost, as you say. The other is around, there's two questions, and then the other is around the option one, and that you somewhat mentioned it, Margaret, because you said it matched. So when we're looking at, we've listed what our hours of instruction are for core French, what the ministry has recommended with the DDSB is, what would be the hours of instruction? And you said it would match the ministry, so you just can clarify that for option 1, for both core and the FI at that point in time.
So that's quite a few questions there. Thank you, Donna. The savings for the kindergarten retrofitting. Currently, we do use kindergarten classes when there's not enough enrollment, adequate enrollment. We do use kindergarten classrooms for primary classrooms without the retrofit. So we would not need to retrofit any of those classes. They would be used for primary students, and they work well for primary students currently, as we are using them for primary students. With the DELF exam, I know that as a principal and when we offered trips or excursions, that we always do ask kids, and we don't ask the children. We usually call the parents, and teachers usually know who their kids are and who needs that kind of help. And I've never really had anybody that turned it down that really needed it. And I know we would be very, very compassionate as we do ask those questions, and we don't just ask kids to put their hands up in class and divulge these things. So we do know our students, and it's important that that we are very careful when we do ask those questions. So I don't foresee that as being a problem, but certainly we'd be very careful, certainly when we are embarking upon those issues. The hours for French, for example, for core French, if you do 40 minutes a week for grades 1, 2, and 3, that's 120 minutes right there. And then we're left with the rest of the time to deal with the grade 4 to 8 students. So 120 minutes. And we know that in the primary grades, 40 minutes a week. And so the rest, the grades 4 to 8, would get the balance of that time from the core French teacher. We know that if we reduce the minutes, we're just adjusting the minutes, the ministry requirements for the FI program, and it does work out to 3,800 hours, exactly what is needed and required. And we know that the ministry has said that 3,800 hours is the minimum requirement to gain that proficiency that you need in second language learning. So there would not be a problem there with the hours at all, with the FI or with the core French.
Hey, just a supplementary there. And because right now we know that as far as the DELF is, we have a very successful rate, but is that because, especially when it comes to French immersion, although there's the attrition, is that because we actually put in the number of hours, like we put quite a bit of extra hours over the ministry requirements is 3,800, but we currently put, over 5,200 hours. And is that where our proficiency and our success is? I just have a bit of concern of significantly reducing the number of hours, even though the ministry says that's a requirement, but our success rate has been high. So how do we attribute that to the number of hours that we put into French immersion?
So we know that currently there are 65 boards across our province, and we know that 10 boards offer 50% intensity in primary, and 31 boards offer anywhere from 60 to 90% intensity of French instruction. Peel board offers 50% from grades 1 to 8, and we know that when we look at when we look at the success rate of our kids in French immersion, we know that the ministry has recommended 3,800 hours as at the minimum, and which lets us recognize and know that that is adequate time for our kids to gain that proficiency of language learning. For example, if you look at core French students that challenge the DELF, they don't have 3,800 hours behind them in French. They've got 600 from grade 8, and we have a lot of our grade 12 core French students who do challenge the DELF, and they are very successful when they challenge it. So the hours, the minimum requirement that the ministry gives to us is adequate for the proficiency that our students need in second language learning.
And just one last comment, because I do have one of the schools that has quite a significant imbalance between the English and the French immersion, and I can't see putting, and plus I have low enrollments in my other schools, so putting a cap in the French immersion, I just have huge concerns what that's going to do to the community, and that, as Patrice has mentioned, our newcomers quite like the French immersion, and a lot of times we have social economic issues as well, and then the school, the only school that is offered in itself, would have a cap on it, and how that will impact, because I can just see people not moving to the south part of Ajax because they can move to the north part of Ajax, and that's where they'll be accommodated one way or the other, in some ways as well, even though there is a cap. So I just not 100% concerned that this is going to be equitable with a cap put on. Anyways.
So I think it's important to just explain the capping. For example, when we cap according to municipal numbers, for example, let's just take Pickering, for example. Pickering had 191 kids in grade 1 enrolled in French immersion this year. And if we looked at 191, and the average class size for a grade 1 is 20 kids, divide 20 into 191, which means that Pickering would get 9 or 10 classes of French immersion. When you look at our French immersion schools in Pickering, for example, so John A. MacDonald currently has one grade 1 FI class. Maple Ridge has currently 4 grade 1 FI classes, and Frenchman Bay has currently 4 grade 1 FI classes. So when we're capping, so 191 divided by 19 would give you 10 classes in Pickering. And when we look at the FI schools that we have in Pickering, that's adequate numbers to really meet the needs of the current enrollment. What we want to do with capping is we just can't, we just cannot provide and sustain the model of, if you want it, it's available. We have to put a cap on it so that we can address the pressures. But capping, I think we will certainly use a model that maximizes the number of students in the program and maximizes the utilization capacity of each school. Does that answer your question, Donna?
So it's not going to be a standard cap, or basically across schools, are you saying?
No, we had looked at capping across the total enrollment across the system, and we recognized for our needs, for our purposes in our boards, we had to look at it regionally, because we do have areas that are growing and areas that are stagnant. And I can ask Christine Natscaville or Carrie just to speak to that. Because it was something that we discussed at length, and this was not the first option we came to. We'd started just looking at school capacity and across the system. Christine, do you want to clarify a little bit for Trustee Edwards?
I'm really sorry, Margaret. I got kicked out and I've just come back in, so I did not hear the question, so I do apologize.
So we're looking at capping. And that it's capping that meets the needs of our community, and it's not just capping to say that we're going to cut it off at 25 across the system.
You're correct, and through you, Chair, we do have to keep in mind that we do have growth occurring in pockets within the board. So capping isn't, and I'm just going to use numbers to say 4 grade 1 classes at Jean Sauvé. Well, we know North Oshawa has a lot of growth that will be occurring. Well, we would need to keep up with that growth and accommodating a percentage of students that's the equivalent to the percentage of the existing grade 1s, because they would be held at Jean Sauvé until a new school is built, a dual track school in North Oshawa. We would have to increase the number of classes at grade 1 at Jean Sauvé to be able to accommodate new growth students. That would happen in all the municipalities where there is growth. So we would have to, year over year, with projections, there would be fluctuation in the CAP classes in each of the schools throughout the whole district.
So just to continue, because we are a growing board, the capping has to be just a little bit fluid to take into consideration some of our areas that are growing. And for example, North Pickering is going to be growing, and North Ajax and North Whitby as well. And so it's just to make sure that we can be responsive, but we just can't, with the pressures that we're having, the system pressures, we just have to be also very careful that we are able to provide a sustainable and viable programming for both our English language and our French language students.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Lazarus, and thank you, Christine Nanscoville. I'm just going to go to Trustee Stone, and then Trustee Templeton and Trustee Barrett. So go ahead, Trustee Stone.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. And thank you for the report. It's comprehensive and tons of information in there. And I'm thrilled that we will be improving our core French program. It's about time. The inequity between French immersion and core French is ridiculous to me. And I think if we finally get to improve the core French, that perhaps some parents will consider not putting their children in French immersion and keep them in the regular stream. I have a few questions, and I apologize if these questions have been asked before, because I realize you've been working on the FSL for a while now. I don't know who's going to answer this, maybe Margaret, but am I to understand that you're still only going to do 600 hours of French in the core French program?
In elementary, 600 is what is required by the ministry.
The minimum.
A minimum of 600 hours. Yes.
So can we increase that?
We can increase it. It's always an option. Currently, we do more than 600 hours. Yeah.
Okay. Also, with the extended French, how, if we only start that in grade 7, can we start extended French earlier? That's one question. If we started in grade 7, how will you make up the hours, which are over 1,000 hours of instruction?
Extended French is 1,260 hours, but remember that the children that would enter into grade 7 French, they've already had French they will have had French from grade 1. Grade 1, 2, 3, 120 minutes a week for our primary grade. So all those hours will accumulate. And then in grade 7, the extended hours, they need to have 1,260 hours by the end of grade 8. So the hours that they've had before will count.
Okay, so you can squeeze those hours into 1 year.
Yes, because in extended French, they're doing possibly 2 subjects in French. 1 or 2 in French. So if you look at the end of a year, they will be able to make the hours up by the end of grade 8. Absolutely.
Okay, so there is the option to start extended French earlier, though.
It's not on the table right now, but
is that something that could be looked at?
It's something that we could look at. Absolutely, we could look at it.
Nora. Dr. Marsh.
Thank you. I'm just going to add to Superintendent Lazarus' responses thus far. I think one of the things we tried to do when we were working through potential recommendations was understanding the extreme shortage of French language educators in the province of Ontario. And so whenever we took something away, we then had to, whenever we wanted to add something, so for example, having core French earlier, we then are reducing the need then for French teachers from other areas, so that overall we still are accessing the same number of French teachers, but not increasing the need for French teachers. So I think that's just an important consideration that we balanced out when we were looking at the different recommendations. In terms of the extended French, there are successful programs across the province where they do start in grade 7, and grade 7 and 8 are a real, it's an immersion program for 7 and 8 really, although it's an extended overall. So the opportunity those students have then grades 7 through 12 is an opportunity for them to graduate fluent. It would then, for anyone who had wanted to or wished to earlier and wasn't able to access the early immersion, or they have grown into the interest for it, grade 7 is a nice turning point for them in terms of setting them up for success in secondary with the extended program. And we had hoped, given the attrition numbers in immersion at secondary, that perhaps if the commitment is made later in grade 7, students and families are making it in an informed way that they have then 6 years of the French programming, and perhaps we'll see less attrition at secondary as a result.
Okay. And
supplemental, Trustee Stone, or you have another question?
I have many, but I will keep it to a couple more, if you don't mind. Sorry. The feedback from parents, did you find whether or not parents would choose the core French program as opposed to the FI if the core French was improved?
Well, the feedback that we got from our parents was that they all, I think 60%, 70% of our parents, our community parents and guardians, said that they would support extending core French into the primary grades. But we didn't ask if they would choose it over French immersion. That was not asked, but overwhelmingly, everyone saw the need of extending and enhancing our core French program.
Okay, and just out of curiosity, I don't know if we're the only place that builds schools in order to teach a language. Are there other places that do that? We build schools in order to teach a language.
I can't answer that question.
I just wondered if there were other places that did the same thing.
So there is certainly precedence within the province of Ontario when new school builds are being done. Sometimes they are from the very beginning established as a single track French immersion school. We do know that the ones that we have coming forward from the very beginning, we did introduce those as single track French immersion for the ones that we have. Moving forward, the Ministry of Education has said for all new school builds, they cannot be single track French immersion. So things will change, but it's a retroactive. We'll take care of the builds that we've already put forward that will be opening over the course of the next year, but then understanding new applications for school builds won't be single track French immersion.
Right, sorry, I should have clarified. I meant actually outside of this province in other countries. I know in Europe, I'm pretty sure they don't build schools in order to teach a language, and many of those students are learning 2-3 languages in the schools. So I just wondered if we're one of the few areas that actually build schools in order to teach a language. Sorry, thank you. I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Stone. Trustee Templeton, you have a question?
Actually, no, Carolyn asked a question about the options that was covered.
Okay.
About the core French was covered off by Linda Stone. So I just want to say thank you for the report. Thanks.
Thank you, Trustee Templeton. And Trustee Barrett?
Okay, with indulgence, Chair Thatcher, I've been involved in the French immersion program since my daughter was first enrolled in 1992. I don't see myself as elitist. I don't see myself as privileged, nor do I see myself as someone that is expecting a great deal. But certainly we as Anglophone parents decided on the option of raising our 6 kids in French immersion. And now my grandchildren are also attending French immersion. So I do get a little bit concerned when we talk about elitism and somehow there's inequity in French immersion. We are a bilingual country. The French immersion program has been very, very successful. And I can remember way back in 1992 when my daughter started French immersion, it started in kindergarten and we made the change to start in grade 1. So in fact, I even have a daughter that is teaching in French immersion today as well. And she's teaching in French immersion because she's a graduate of French immersion. So I get a little concerned when we're going to make some, I think, not significant changes, but changes to the program. And I recognize, Superintendent Lazarus, that I've been involved in this program for many, many decades. And many of the issues that you have outlined in your report were issues that we were experiencing in 1992, in 2000, 2010, 2020, and likely long after I'm gone. We'll still be discussing this, because French immersion, we shouldn't see this as an elitist program, because I would dare to be able to explain to our new Canadians how we would see French immersion as an elitist program. I get concerned when we attach labels to the program. We are a bilingual country. So I have a couple of just comments, and I will try and be quick as well. As with regards to the kindergarten, absolutely eradicate it. I've been advocating that for a decade. It makes no sense to be able to have our children fight for places in single track schools. It is heck in a handbasket every September, long overdue. Go forward, Margaret, go forward. When we're talking about capping enrollment, we have to tread very, very carefully, because then it will be an elitist program. I get concerned about where those caps will take place. I've heard people say, well, it's going to be, because we have growth in the north, and granted, I understand that. But I don't want to be able to set up a process by which families are divided. And it does happen in other boards, where an older child goes to French immersion and the younger child doesn't get in by a draw. That the classes are full, and so therefore you've got two kids going to two different schools. I mean, it is about being able to make sure that we have choice, but we need to tread very carefully when we talk about how we cap. I understand that core French needs to be strengthened. I fully support that. But I'm concerned when we start to be able to pitch core French against French immersion. I get concerned when we start the language that says that we want to start to be able to balance the program, when French immersion has been such a success for so many people. And certainly it's created a great deal of chatter on social media, and also amongst our French immersion parents and population as well. I understand there's significant attrition in French immersion. It's outlined in the report, Superintendent Lazarus, but of course there's attrition. We don't really offer the supports in the French language as we do in the English language. And the first protocol when a child starts to struggle in French immersion, and I know, and I've been there and had done it, is take your child out of French immersion. Is there any wonder why there's a 50% attrition rate? We don't necessarily have all the same supports that we do. And I know we've been improving. Durham has gone a long way in being able to ensure that we have supports in the French immersion program, but it still is not where it needs to be able to be. We talk about 349 teachers that are qualified to teach French immersion that don't teach in French immersion. And I would suggest those numbers will go higher, because if there's a reason why 349 teachers don't determine to be able to teach French. And I believe that if you start to be able to strengthen the core French, you will see an even greater number of French immersion teachers now being put into core French, exercising their tenure rights, and being able to move to the English language classes. And I see that happening all the time. I recognize that there is a shortage of teachers. We have been experiencing this for a long time. But the Ottawa Carleton Board hires French immersion teachers in January. They offer them full-time contracts. I know of many students that my children went to school with who teach French immersion who left our board because they weren't offered a position until September or October, where the other boards snapped them up in earlier months because they knew the enrollment was there. I think we need to start to be able to look at different methodologies of ensuring that we can recruit and keep teachers as well. And just two final elements that I just want to be able to, well, maybe three. One is talking about the schools. I want to make sure there's an equity between a dual track and a single track. We're talking about making changes to the dual track and ensuring that there's equity in the sense of, enrollment within that school. We've got to make sure that what we're not doing is penalizing those parents that happen to live in an area where there's a dual track school. And I know there are many dual tracks, one in particular in Oshawa, that the numbers of English students wouldn't necessarily sustain that school. I know that there's one in Ajax, talking to Trustee Edwards. That would mean also changing boundaries in order to be able to make sure that there is significant enough English enrollment in those schools in order to be able to have a 50-50 balance that doesn't exist today and won't exist in a declining population base in mid to south Ontario, Oshawa. So, and also just in closing, we are asking, this is a very significant piece of work. And I recognize the amount of talent in reading the list of individuals that contributed to this. I mean, it's almost the who of French immersion in the Durham District School Board, led by yourself, Superintendent Lazarus. But this is a very significant decision. When we change boundaries for school, we put together a couple of options, and then we talk about those options for a great deal of time. I'm concerned that we are putting this report on the table today, and in 2 weeks' time, we're supposed to be able to make a decision. I mean, I have some grave difficulties not understanding what the reaction, and we're only giving parents and community 2 weeks to react to the changes. So I'm concerned about that process and about the time frame. And in closing, I recognize, Superintendent Lazarus, that this is a Herculean piece of work. And I recognize that solving the issues of French immersion are not just Durham-wide. This has been an issue for OPSPA, it's been an issue for Ontario, it's been an issue for Canada, and being able to recruit and retain French immersion teachers. I recognize that the enrollment pieces continue to add pressure to the amount of students that are enrolled. All those things are absolutely correct. I may not be objecting to a lot of your recommendations or the team's recommendations, but I am concerned about the process and the need to be able to have further consultation, because this is the plan going forward. And I'm concerned that 2 weeks is not enough in order to truly be able to represent with your plan on what the community is thinking. So I do thank you, Superintendent Lazarus. I know how big this task is. And so I don't want you to think that I'm not appreciative of how much work has gone into this. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Barrett. I'm sure that Superintendent Lazarus and her team are very appreciative of the feedback that we've been able to provide tonight. I'd like to move on with the agenda, but I'd also like to suggest that if you have any additional questions or comments, that you direct those to Director Marsh and Superintendent Lazarus. So in the agenda, item 7, recommended action, seeing none. So moving on to information items, we'll begin with the student trustee reports. Aliyah, can we begin with you tonight?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, let's see if you can see me now. 1 second. There we go. Alrighty.
Hi there.
Through you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. We're actually going to be starting with Logan today.
Oh, good. Thank you. Go ahead, Logan.
All right, through you, Chair. During our December 14th Senate meeting, Ms. Campbell from the Canadian Student Leadership Association gave a presentation to us and the senators. She showed us resources provided on their website that can help us with our leadership. The CSLA is providing us with a four-level certification program. All DDSB students are able to receive this program at member pricing. The Western region of the DDSB held its first ever rivalry week. During the rivalry week, the Western schools competed in spirit activities. Congratulations to J. Clark Richardson for winning. The new year has brought some changes to students' academic culture, and students are appreciative of the DDSB response. Some concerns that have been brought forward are the lack of resources which impact a student's success.
student trustees, we are doing our best to guide students towards the correct people for technological resources. However, there have been a number of students who have voiced their concerns of food security. There are students in certain schools across the board who are dependent on the food services provided by the staff within each school and are now worried about the lack of that resource. Students would be appreciative if they were guided to resources that would help satisfy the physiological needs of an individual. All the supports being provided are being recognized and students are grateful. As student trustees, we hope to encourage and strengthen the communication between students and the boards, allowing all accessible resources to be effectively used. Once again, we'd like to thank the staff, the school board, and students for pivoting so quickly.
In recognizing integrity as December's character trait of the month, we'd like to shout out our DDSB schools for their continuous efforts to connect with their students and raise spirits, even when those efforts go unseen. Many collections were continued for various charitable drives, and holiday spirit weeks became prominent in the days before winter break, inviting a little extra cheer before the holidays that were certain to look different for families this year. A special shout out to Oshawa and Whitby schools for showing their gratitude by writing letters to seniors and frontline workers in their community and generating some extra positivity. Another shout out goes to Dumbarton High School for beginning an elementary engagement program with their feeder schools to introduce younger students to leadership and its applications. With responsibility being the character trait of January, we're optimistic that the staff and students at DDSB will take responsibility in their actions of keeping themselves and those around them safe by respecting the newly introduced lockdown restrictions. Thank you, and we're willing to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments for our student trustees? Trustee Edwards.
Thank you. I just to follow up on a comment by Arpita, she mentioned about food security being an issue. And I'm just wondering, has those been directed? Because I mean, we just had a presentation on around health and well-being and the ability to have access to our warehouse of possibly the food, and if that process has been sort of made more context available through staff to address the food security issue.
Thank you. I have recalled that presentation, and I have definitely passed on that information to students who have asked for those resources. The only concern has been if there is more accessibility or if there are other resources that students or us as student trustees may not be aware of that we could pass forward.
Thank you, Arpita, and thank you, Trustee Edwards. Moving on to Superintendent Andrew McCauley and her presentation, Life Beyond High School Transition Support.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Thatcher. The purpose of this report, which begins on page 266 of tonight's agenda, is to provide information about a recently launched online resource for families of students with developmental and/or intellectual disabilities in order to support transition planning for life beyond high school. A few highlights from the report include our opportunities and responsibilities outlined in a number of PPMs, and our responsibility for integrated transition planning as part of these students' individual education plans, our DDSB service achievements as a co-lead board in the ministry pilot, Access Talent, Support Transitions to Post-Secondary Pathways for Students with Developmental Disabilities, and as an example of the ways our teams continue to refine and grow resources for families in ways that support accessibility, such as providing time flexibility for access to resources, which is being highlighted by SEAC as being important. The Google site supports engaging students and families as a tool for connecting them with important community agencies and partners. The team will take feedback from families and our community partners to continue to improve the resource when we transition it to being embedded within the DDSB website in phase 2 of the project development. Life Beyond High School Transition Supports is a consolidated, Durham region-based resource to support students and their families in the various pathways beyond high school. The site continues to be promoted through social media, SEAC associations, and our school teams. This report is provided tonight for trustee information and awareness. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Superintendent McCauley. Are there any comments for Andrew tonight? Is your hand up, Trustee Stone?
Yes, it is.
Go ahead, please.
Oh, thank you, through you, Chair. I just wondered, I think I read this report correctly in that you you bring partners in to the board and you assist in hiring. Is that correct?
Go ahead.
So through you, Chair. We do not involve ourselves in the operations of our community partners, but we facilitate connecting families. So traditionally, one time a year, we have brought all our community partners together underneath those categories such as recreation, finances, post-secondary opportunities to allow a connect point. And so this year with the pandemic, that was our kickstart to change the format and take it onto a web-based resource. And a lot of our community partners provided web links or videos. And it's really around facilitating the connections and making sure that there's a broad team for our students, because those with intellectual and developmental disabilities, we need to take a multi-year approach to supporting the pathway. These are typically our students that stay with us until 21 and then transition to a number of really excellent pathways that can include post-secondary, adult programming, direct to workplace, or into community programs.
Okay, thank you. And just a follow-up, is the DDSB part of the programming, as in, do we hire alumni? Do we bring students back to work at the board?
We don't currently. We have had a co-op student return to us. One of our greatest successes of some of our programs, and I'll just highlight Transition to Work, is one of our programs where students, the end goal is employment in the community. And so sometimes when we have an early exit from the program, it's because one of our partners has picked up for paid employment, which is amazing for our students. So just different pathways. But as we continue to diversify our workforce, you raise an excellent point about pathways and our students seeing themselves reflected in our workforce.
Right. I think it'd be great to see some of our students here working at the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Stone. Trustee Edwards, is your hand up? I believe it is. Go ahead.
And just, I know that this was, this basically website, Google site was just launched, but I'm looking at, as far as, you talk about there's really no financial implication because most of them are links to other sites, but there's still it's still the maintenance of ensuring that those links still exist, because links to resources and the other websites do break. So we want that and in some cases, some associations and so forth, some of the programs that they're offering no longer exist because of the pandemic, and depending on the situation. So I'm just wondering as far as maintenance. And then the second thing is to follow up a little bit on Trustee Stone's as far as sort of tracking success and the ability, because before we used to have the data from the transition night where we had, who came and how many people were referred somewhat and or participated and so forth. What kind of data or be able to tracking can we do with this to ensure that we are continuing to get that traction on the connection of these agencies and people taking part of services?
So Trustee Edwards, your questions around maintenance and tracking. Okay, thank you.
So through you, Chair, thank you for those questions. Currently, because of that ministry pilot project, and this was the plus 1 year to a 3-year project that we were co-lead for, we did have a funded position through that grant. The 2 co-lead boards were able to each acquire 1.0 FTE. And that's Sade's role, and we've been looking at her role and our work experience coordinator just in terms of succession planning in that way. So right now, Sade, as well as Officer McKee, took lead on the project. And so the responsibility currently resides with them, but we do have mechanisms such as our transition advisory group, TAG, that Durham co-hosts regionally, that it could be, based on kind of your comment, a regular action item for that group to ensure that their resources, as many of those agencies sit on that committee. In terms of tracking, because you're right, we would have attendance statistics normally. Again, Sade working with our teams, and we've really tried to mobilize social work more in terms of our integrated transition planning as family and system support and community liaison. We move it more from an event-based participation to actioning service pathways for our kids, and where we see community partners actively engaged and mapping within kids' transition plans. So we're trying to get it right within the IEP and the collaboration, and how many students were able to move into service and onto wait lists and off of wait lists with our community partners, more than coming through the front door of an event here at the Ed Center. So definitely something that we need to grow. As you're well aware as well, there's challenges in terms of pathway data tracking for our students, particularly when there's a year or two gap before they enter programs such as CIC and things like that. So definitely on our radar, because we need to know where we have gaps in order to know where we can better grow, because this one is one that we continually need to build our service for these important students.
And
thank you, Superintendent McCauley.
Supplementary, yes. It's around transition to sort of employment. There's a couple of employment agencies that are specifically around supposed to be supporting students with, well, people with disabilities. And I'm just wondering if we have made any contact with those particular groups, because in order to provide education both ways, and that, you know, I know from personal experience where a particular agency doesn't really have the experience of dealing with people with disabilities, but that's what they're there for. And so I'm just wondering if we've made any partnerships from that perspective as well.
Through you, Chair. I think, again, that's an opportunity for us to grow that deeper. We had looked at a partnership with Ability Center in terms of a private funder that they were looking at employer training and community agency planning. But when we looked at the data ownership, we were concerned about the information privacy for our students. So we did not engage at that time, but continually open to that. And then most recently, we've re-engaged the partnership with Ability Center. One, they've positioned a rep onto our accessibility committee serving our system, and two, we've engaged therapeutic recreation through virtual capacity for our PLP programs. And then, as you know, ASAD is down there as well. So we're looking at that, and really as Ability Center, looking at that social construction of accessibility being lead, and how we partner with them and the partnerships that they have developed as well. We just want to make sure that we're protective of the students that we're aiming to serve at the same time.
Thank you so much, Superintendent McCauley. So moving on to trustee attendance records with Trustee Morton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Thatcher. My report can be found on pages 272 to 285, the trustee attendance records, and that is my report.
Thank you. Trustee Barnes, the OPSPA report.
Thank you, Chair Thatcher. There's nothing to report at this time.
Thank you very much. Superintendent Gary Crossdale and Andrea McCauley, with your presentation around positive school climate and your well-being report.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
We can hear you.
Perfect.
Gary.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair, the report can be found in tonight's package starting on page 286. Schools supported by district staff are responsible for creating positive school climates that stand against marginalizing experiences and that respect the identity of all students. The use of mattering in schools is a mechanism through which positive school climates can be cultivated and maintained. For students to be ready to learn, they need to feel a strong sense of that others believe in them. Schools are responsible for taking appropriate action to identify and address discriminatory experiences and to prevent trauma and harm. Focusing on student needs, student voices, and engaging them positively results in safe and caring school climates. This information report guides trustees and communities on how we are supporting positive school climates and how we support well-being in the DDSB. As a result of being equity-focused and proactive in our work, we have rebranded the Safe Schools Department to the Positive School Climate Department. The purpose of this is to focus and showcase prevention and proactive strategies and initiatives. Anchored in this Positive Climate Department and the Inclusive Student Services Department is a commitment to essential work that is reflective and integrated approach across departments and school teams. The information is framed through the topics of positive school climates, prevention focus, mentally healthy classrooms, schools and workplaces, tiered approach to supports, and trauma-informed practices. Positive school climate highlights the importance of caring, healthy relationships and the importance of intentionally nurtured school climates. Educational research has shown that a positive school climate improves student outcomes. Students do better when they feel safe, included, and they feel they matter. Educators need to purposefully develop the conditions where students will thrive. In the 2020 to 2020 year, the Positive School Climate Department is running a series of professional development workshops designed to support staff in the creation of a positive school climate. The sessions include developing healthy relationships, anti-oppressive practices to support classroom teachers, and navigating the world of social media in the classroom. Working with a commitment to an anti-oppressive approach, the Positive School Climate Department is working closely with human rights, equity, Indigenous education, and mental health departments to support the staff in the importance of CRRP and culturally responsive and relevant curriculum. Commitments include addressing anti-Black and anti-Indigenous racism and the experiences of the LGBTQTI2S students and staff throughout professional development opportunities, the Unlearn series, as well as resource development at the DDSB You Matter posters. I'll now pass you on to Superintendent Andrea McCauley.
Thank you. Our schools are ideally placed to influence a student's sense of well-being and to promote mental health, notice concerns early, offer services, and provide ongoing support. The main role of schools is to promote wellness, facilitate skills development, support early identification and intervention when problems arise, and to promote safety. Teams, both school and central staff, work together to support when incidents occur. Behavior is a form of communication of need, and it's important for the student, their peers who experience behaviors in their learning environments, and staff to be supported when incidents occur. Teams such as social work and psychological services are integrated in the planning for individual students and can support their peers either individually or through class debriefs. Staff are supported through processes such as debriefs as well and have deeper supports such as EFAP, our assistance program, as available. The board has a 3-year strategy to build capacity and system implementation with respect to trauma-informed practices. Practices that are fully integrated with the knowledge of trauma related to discrimination, racism, and oppression, and to work towards healing-centered approaches, supports, and learning environments. It is important to distinguish trauma-informed practices from being informed of trauma. Trauma-informed practices move us from individual experiences to more widespread experiences of individuals and in addressing that which is embedded in our organizations to promoting healing-centered environments that prevent causing and perpetuating trauma and harm. When our schools are trauma-informed, students cultivate lasting resilience, which leads to significant improvement in behavior, fewer suspensions, fewer expulsions, and significant improvements in academic achievement. Prevention is not a passive process. It involves a whole school approach to prioritizing anti-discrimination, safety, and caretaking for all students. Prevention includes how we learn about our individual students, how we develop our plans to support them, and how interactions are opportunities for learning. We have a span of measurement tools in place to help inform our practices, shape our responsiveness, and support ongoing monitoring. Data uses include regular cycles of review. These include processes for immediate support and response to incidents when reported, monthly monitoring at the senior team table and together with school leaders, as well as annual public data reporting. There is a direct and synergetic relationship between positive school climates, mentally healthy schools, and trauma preventative practices. The interdependent factors that exist within and between these three areas interact and influence our student well-being by contributing to a strong sense of identity and a sense of mattering. The Durham District School Board has a strong commitment to enhance and promote student mental health. Schools are ideal places for students to experience a strong sense of belonging, to know where they matter, where their lived realities are valued and respected, and where they are treated with dignity, fairness, and kindness. To be ready to learn, students need to feel a strong sense of safety, belonging, and well-being at school. This concludes our information report, and the team is happy to take questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Superintendent McCauley and Superintendent Crossdale. Are there any comments or questions? Trustee Morton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Thatcher. I'm looking at page 295, and I realize that we've made great gains in the last few years, and I understand that everyone around this table knows the importance of addressing the needs of the whole child, and mental well-being is extremely important. But I am a little bit alarmed when I see that only 66% of our students feel like they matter at school. I think every one of our students should feel that he or she matters at school. I'm also a little bit alarmed when the parents say that 41% of our parents say that they feel like their child has a voice in education. I would like to see that grow immensely. So I do have some concerns, and I think we need to address those. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Morton. And then I'll go to Trustee Edwards and then Trustee Barnes. Go ahead, Trustee Edwards.
I had asked this for the last time last year, and we didn't get it again this year. It's the longitudinal data, because I know that what we felt whether it mattered or not in the school, we felt we mattered in the school was low before, and we put a bunch of measures in place, and we have no idea if we've improved or not. Did those measures work? So we need the longitudinal data to see where, have we improved? This is where we can see, are the measures that we put in place, the pilots, the projects that we put in place are working. And I agree with Trustee Morton that not impressed with those two numbers, but again, we don't have the longitudinal data. We need that when this report is provided. And then also when it comes to suspensions, expulsion, we've got these large numbers, and I recognize that we don't go down to the smaller numbers because of or identifying it differently, but we do need a breakdown. And that's where we used to get stuff a little bit further, had further discussions, and where we could in camera around some of the information so that we can again identify, are the measures that we've put in place to identify this, as are they going? And then one of the concerns that is growing around is especially around we're not allowed to have any expulsions up to grade 3, and then suspensions, and then now the increase in the number of exclusions, the possibility of exclusions, and they're not tracked. So I mean, there's a whole bunch of issues, the data that I'm missing here, to actually look at and see, are we doing well as a board, being successful in some of the things that we're implementing?
Do one of the superintendents want to talk about the plan in terms of the fact that the data is static currently on the school climate survey because of the administration dates and when we're next doing it? Go ahead, Superintendent McCall.
So facilitated through our positive school climate, it's a biannual, and that's where you see the date stamp on the samples of data that were included in the report. What our intent is to bring a comprehensive report doing an overview of where positive school climate and particularly mental health and well-being intersect, and give kind of that book cover synopsis and some data samples. So a lot of that data will be revised in upcoming cycles as we move through those both survey phase for positive school climate as well as some of the reporting cycles that you refer to.
Thank you, Superintendent McCauley. Did you
just
have
one
something
comment.
to add, Director Marsh? Do you have something to add?
No, thanks.
Just
Okay,
a comment,
thank you.
Christine.
Yes, go ahead.
Lovely infographics, but these aren't accessible to anybody, just so you know.
Thank you, Trustee Edwards. Move on to Trustee Barnes and then to Trustee Forbes. Go ahead, Patrice.
Thank you. Donna covered some of the questions that I had. I just wanted to also check if we have yet devised a way to track in-school suspensions. Because I know I've had conversations with parents where they haven't been aware that their child might be doing an in-school suspension. So the child's at school, but they might be in the office or, but they're outside of classes. So I'm just wondering if we're looking at that data, if we're able to track that data. If not, how we capture that data so we know what's going on so we can keep an eye on that particular piece.
I can
go ahead, Superintendent Crossdale.
Yeah, so there's really no such thing as a in-school suspension. That's a terminology that sometimes principals and vice principals and teachers might use. Typically, if a student is being disciplined for something in school, it could be called a timeout, it could be an all-day timeout type of thing, but there's really no such thing as an in-school suspension legally. And in terms of the suspensions, I think what we're trying to do now is that my understanding is that the sports sometimes, even though they had suspensions, the actual information in terms of the total amounts of suspensions and data that comes to them comes in, I think, the summer of the next year. So we don't necessarily always have the data immediately, but what we are doing right now, we've had our specialists in the data, let's call them, have done some digging into some situations that other boards are doing in terms of getting the data much more quickly and readily, so that we can look at it as superintendents in terms of, seeing where are the most suspensions happening, what grades they're happening, and then we can use that data to make sure that we are providing supports to those students that are having difficulties in certain grades.
Thank you. I think that dashboard type setup is very good because we need to track trends that are happening so we can stop them before they become a part practice. So thank you very much on that.
And just to go back to the suspensions not happening for kids in grades kindergarten to grade 3, is that the ministry came out with that outline saying that we should not be doing that. Because they are young students, and it's a couple of things that we think about when we're deciding about suspensions. We think about progressive discipline and mitigating factors. And when you think about children that are in kindergarten to grade 3, they're so young. And it's not to say that they don't know what they're doing, but they're not at the same level as they are in grade 6. So we consider the age can be a mitigating factor, and that we want to be progressive in terms of discipline and knowing that they're very young, and we still want them to even early on to still like school and understand it's not just a place where you get in trouble. So, there's a lot of language that goes behind it, a lot of action that goes behind when we think about disciplining. And just from my experience from being in the Caring and Safe Schools for a long period of time is that oftentimes the discipline doesn't always solve the problem. It's better that we have really meaningful relationships. And that's one of the reasons that we've gone to school climate, because I think, we need to do an overhaul in terms of how we think about why kids are behaving the way they are, and what we can do as the adults in the building to help it to get better.
Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Crossdale. I'm going to go to Trustee Forbes and then Trustee Stone. Go ahead,
Thank you.
Darlene.
Thank you. And I just had a question around the school climate survey and the well-being survey. So I know that the next surveys are being issued this month, but I have to remind myself it is 2021. It's not next year, it's right now. Are there going to be any issues because we have virtual schools now that we didn't have years ago? I'm just wondering how we're going to kind of make sense of the data given the disparity between that school year and this current school year.
So we do have one of our principals who's been kind of taking care of this in terms of what you're speaking to. I'm not as versed in it as he is. I'm still kind of learning, so to speak. But my understanding is that he has taken that into consideration and that we're planning for that as well.
Thank you.
If I may just add to Superintendent Crossdale's response, I think one of the things when we talk about examining the longitudinal data is that we're going to have to understand that there's going to be gaps in our analysis. EQAO is an example where, of course, we don't have that student achievement data for some points. We recognize that school enrollments have fluctuated. And so when we're looking at the school climate survey, a lot of the students aren't necessarily at that school anymore, right? So I think what we need to do is it's a mark along the way, and then we'll continue to try to use it because it is, when we talk about student voice, that's a really powerful student voice to us. And so we'll continue to try to address it, understanding though that it's an imperfect, it's not perfect ever, but this one, there will be further gaps in terms of missing voice or missing experience. But I think we are still going to go ahead and do it. It's a requirement, but we also want to do it. And then from the mental health perspective, we actually think it's a really good check-in time as well.
Thank you very much. Trustee Stone?
Hi, thank you, through you, Chair. I just wanted to make sure I've got these numbers right. I'm on page 295. So the 86%, the 95, the 71%, that is based on about a 45% feedback rate from students. So it's based on the 31,568 students. Is that correct?
So these are results from 2018 to 2019.
Right, but when you say 86% feel safe at school, that's based on your number of surveys completed.
Yeah.
Correct? So based on 31,000 students,
correct,
as opposed to as opposed to the 70,000 that we have.
Correct.
Correct. So the 66% is based on the 31,000. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I was reading that right. And the other thing was on page 300, when we have from September 2019 to March 2020, reports were submitted by, so those were reports that were submitted. So 41% of 861 EAs, that's about 353, but are those are reports, so not incidents. So can we break those down into incidents? Because that seems like a pretty high number, but it could be a fairly small number of incidents.
Go ahead, Superintendent McCauley.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. We do recognize that our staff that work with our most vulnerable students, and often those that are developing their communication systems through more positive means, that's just, again, behavior form of communication. We do enact support such as an EA task force where we work with Human Resources, Inclusive Student Services, and CUPE, specifically around the experiences of our EA staff. Within the legislation as well, there's a few different definitions of a violent incident. And so what's really important to us as staff is those monitoring pieces and the ongoing conversations to understand what's going on for both the team members as well as the students they support, because it's really important for us to understand the narratives of the incidences as well as the degree of, because we have everything represented within the violent incident reports, from a significant event with a student to, say, a student who is nonverbal with autism, who taps, but the staff may not be familiar with that being their communication for needing to go to the washroom. So it's a full range, but we do recognize that we have work to do in terms of the experience of our educational assistants working with our students. And that's where you see a number of initiatives enacted that involve their voice, as well as QP to take a look at that, as well as health and safety as a partner at that table as well. So as you mentioned, the breakdown is really important, where we're seeing repeated incidents. We also look at the frequency and duration when we look at students' behavior, because we can see a student who has fairly high and frequent escalations where they start to decrease both in terms of significance as well as a stretched frequency, and that's really important. And it's really important that our staff continue to report while it still comes under that definition of a violent incident. So it really goes back to that school-based narrative and how family of school superintendents and the various teams, including Superintendent Crosdale's team and Inclusive Student Services, do a wraparound of both the staff, the student who's at the core of the program, as well as the peers that are in their program spaces as well.
Thank you for your comprehensive answer, Superintendent McCauley. But I wasn't actually specifically asking about just the EAs. I'm just saying the report, the number of reports. I'm just wondering if that can be broken down so that we can see that that percent is actually only a certain number of actual incidents.
So Trustee Stone, are you suggesting a certain number of, as opposed to repeat incidents that are from one particular child that might make up a certain number? Is that your question?
Well, I'm just saying that sometimes the numbers, somebody may look at this and say the numbers seem high in certain areas. All I'm saying is that if we saw that the 41% actually represented only a certain number of incidents, it just looks different when you read it that way. When 41% of EAs or 10% of staff created reports of incidents, but I'm just saying those incidents, that 10% is actually could be quite small. We're saying the reports are that percentage of people who wrote reports, but the incidents are what matters. The number of incidents to me is what matters.
Do you understand the question, Superintendent McCauley?
I believe so. So thank you. So the data is generated through when a staff member submits a report. There's a notification that immediately goes to their supervisor, and then the data is culminated into a data dashboard, which is what we are able to do to break down. So in your question around number of reports versus number of incidents, principals or supervisors can actually tie a number of reports to the same incident. So for instance, if there were 3 EAs involved in a situation, because if we were enacting BMS, we would want a number of staff in a high incident. If all 3 EAs reported as being experiencing a violent incident, then the principal can link those where we would have data that would be 1 incident, but 3 reports tied to. We also see a breakdown in terms of most of the reports are student-based. We've had a couple of community or other interactions, but we see the age of the student, the grade, where in the school site the incident took place, as well as who's reporting and the nature thereof. So we can do a really good breakdown to match the strategies of response to try and reduce the frequency and intensity of the reports and the experiences.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Trustee Stone. I see no further questions, so I'm moving on. We have one report tonight from the Equity and Diversity Ad Hoc Committee. Trustee Barnes.
Thank you. The committee met on November 18th before we went into holidays. Everybody was just about ready for nothing in December, to be totally honest. So we, at that meeting, we went over 2 large pieces of data presentation. We went over the draft human rights framework and community consultation process. Daphika shared that the presentation for the human rights framework and community consultation process has been shared with SEAC, Parent PIC, the Indigenous Advisory Council, and the different DDSB infinity groups. Meetings were taking place with the presidents of the different unions and federations over the next few weeks before the holidays and just after. And the next step will be to reach out to families, students, and employees to get their feedback as well. There will be a parent summary that will be developed so parents can understand what's being done and why, as well as there will also be a process that's developed for complaints, not internal and external complaints of human rights. We also went over the student census. So Chris Conley came in and presented what the student census looked like. We share the work with through the data. The presentation was taken from the 2018 to 2019 census data. We had questions around how the data is analyzed, what is missing, how we translate the data to talk about the different things that affect our different communities. We discuss what do we see as the best way to honor the information that families have and entrusted us with as we go back to report to the different DDSB families. The next steps includes meeting and training with trustees around the data, how to translate the data, what the data look like, how it connects to different communities within our DDSB communities. We'll be sharing the data and going out with to the different communities. We'll be sharing it with staff, and we'll be sharing it with the different affinity networks. So the challenge we're looking at is how do we establish trust with a lot of our marginalized and racialized communities so we can discuss this data. There wasn't a lot of surprise in the data. It just kind of confirms what some of the things that we have already heard over and over in different areas. So we're looking forward to exploring that some more as trustees, and that would be coming up in, actually we already have a date for that in January. And so we'll get a chance to dive into the data. It's actually pretty exciting. Actually, it was kind of exciting. So that is my report. We'll be meeting again January 18th, I believe.
Thank you, Trustee Barnes. We have no correspondence tonight or other business, so I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Trustee Templeton. Seconder. Trustee Morton. All in favor? Opposed? All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Take care.
Linda, your first